Hey guys, Sam here, and yeah, sorry if this is another Owl House centered video. I'm trying to get like a real review out, hopefully in August by the time maybe it's my birthday, it's the 3rd. But right now, I just had to talk about the last few episodes from Owl House. Now, I did make a video in early July talking about the first 4, but now I'm talking about the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th episodes. Through the Looking Glass Ruins, Hunting Palisman, Eda's Requiem, and the one that just came out today, Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door. So, as you can tell, this will probably be a spoiler-filled review, so that's your first warning about that. And if you don't want to be spoiled, watch the other episodes first before you watch this video. So, I'm giving you the warning right now. And number 2, I will try to go over, like, what I think of each episode, really, really quickly, like, very fast. And I'm mostly going to probably talk about Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door mostly in this video. Because, oh boy, does it have a lot of stuff in it. That really surprised me. But anyway, let me just get a swig of water here. Okay, let's go ahead. Can I put the bottle down correctly? Okay, so Through the Looking Glass Ruins. Let's go ahead and talk about that first. So that one has 2 plots. And one of them involves Gus, and the other one that involves Luz and Amity. So the Gus plot, people were kind of saying, hey, give Gus his very own episode. Let's give him some proper development. And this episode did give him some development. He actually feels a bit insecure and about his illusion magic, and he doesn't really think it's important, and he fears that it really isn't useful. And there's been a couple cases where he accidentally used it, that hurt his friends, including Willow. So he's feeling down about it, and eventually he comes across some kids from Glandis High, and one of the kids that's tagging along is also someone that goes to Gus's school, Hexside, which is, I know he has a long name, but I'm just going to call him Matt, just to keep it simple. So these Glandis High kids all have their own kind of magic, like, fire, plant, all that stuff. And Gus wants to join them, but he doesn't exactly have those kind of magic, and the only thing he can do is illusions. So Luz decides to help him out by giving him some of her glyphs. So anyway, Gus tags along with them, and Matt, that Matt character, he's basically like that person that's like, hey, you think you can really do that? You think you really are hot shit? Well, I want to see you try it. That kind of attitude, the kind of person you want to just slap in the face. But yeah, anyway, so Gus does impress the other kids by using Luz's glyphs, and eventually they make their way to a illusionist graveyard, and Gus finds this out when they start searching around the place, and it turns out these Glandis High kids are trying to find these magical orb thingies, something like that. I don't know the proper name of it, but they look like shiny orbs. So anyway, Gus is telling them hey, we're kind of trespassing here, we're kind of grave robbing a bit. We shouldn't take this kind of stuff. And the others are like, nah, come on, you're being paranoid, that kind of thing. Anyway, so then a monster protecting the graveyard comes in, and it turns out that's actually an illusion, and it was made by this guy who, best description I can give this guy is if he's Dr. Wily, Mega Man's enemy, if he was a good guy and he practiced magic. But anyway, the other kids, mostly the Glandis High kids, aren't really too afraid of illusion magic, and they trap that scientist guy and Gus together. But Matt decides to save them, and the reason why is because Matt was giving Gus a hard time, but Gus was really not trying to boast or anything like that. And there even was a moment where Matt could have been killed by some kind of plant creature, and Gus saved his life. So Matt decides, you know what, if you were willing to help me, then I'm sure I'm willing to help you. So they come up with this scheme by using illusion magic to really make the graveyard seem like it's coming alive. And this is where, if you watched the trailer and you saw the statues that were crying blood, that kind of thing, that's where it comes from. This is the episode where it has that. So the other Glandis High kids get scared and run away, and the one that was leading them, this girl that, seemed like a nice, cute character at first, but turns out is just, a bitch. She doesn't get scared of it easily at first, but as the illusion gets even more and more real to her, she starts to freak out. And thankfully she did, because they used a lot of, Gus's concentration, and so the scheme worked. And Gus and Matt also help out the scientists, repair some of the damages to the graveyard. And they're even told by the guy, hey, you can come back here anytime you'd like. And it seems like Gus and Matt might actually be kind of friends. Or at this point, they're maybe acquaintances. Maybe they're on the fences when it comes to being friends. So yeah, that was Gus's story, and yeah, it was a very decent story for him. I really do like how they did give him some development, giving us some of his insecurities. What is he thinking? And I really did like how the story ended, and I really do like the idea of Gus getting a new friend and Matt. And I know some people have already made their their ships about these two. I don't know if it's gonna go down that road, But who knows? Anything can happen. Like, this show likes to defy your expectations a lot, though. So anything can happen. Anything's possible. So yeah, Gus's story was definitely, there's nothing really too much to say about it. It's just a really decent story. It had some good laughs. Gus was awesome. And the illusion magic at the end, the scheme, was really, really good. It kind of reminded me of, like, how, Scarecrow's hallucination dreams, when Batman, like, was put under his like, his fear gas in Arkham Asylum. And even, like, that DLC thing where you see, Scarecrow being as big as a giant and everything just being all orange and kind of hellish. It kind of reminded me of that. Like, it's obviously something that's not there, but it feels real. It looks real, and it looks really, really good. So yeah, I really did like that. But unfortunately, Gus's story is going to have to get overshadowed a little bit by Luce and Amity again. Like, it happened before when it happened with Grom. Like, Gus was trying to help out King when he was, like, being some kind of announcer at the Grom party. It also happened when we found out that Gus went through puberty, but we get more Lumity moments there. And then we have an episode that finally does put him in the spotlight, but then, of course, you have a subplot that mostly everyone else talks about, and man, that sucks. Like, Gus deserves a lot more attention. But yeah, here, I'm giving him the attention. His story was definitely pretty decent. I liked it. But now let's talk about the subplot. Now, this is one, of course, obviously a lot of people are talking about. So, in this one, based on what happened in the last episode, Keeping Up Appearances, where Ida's mom told Luce that you're not the only human that's ever been to the Boiling Isles. And one of the humans, and the human, I think, Philip Winnebay, that's, hopefully I'm saying his name right. How does it? Philip Winnebane. Philip Winnebane. Okay. Alright, so that's his name. Yeah, I have the wiki on here just to help me out. So anyway, Luce finds out that there was a diary that Philip made and donated to the library. So she figures if I get this diary, I can get more information on how to get back home. So Luce goes down to the library, meets up with Amity, and of course they're both a blushing mess, because it seems like now both of them have like huge crushes on each other at this point, and even Amity's siblings know this too. They kind of have a feeling that that's happening as well. So they go into this kind of like the Owl House version of the restricted section, and Amity warns Luce that if they do get caught by her boss, who's the guardian of this place, she could lose her job, and Luce promises that that won't happen. So they go in there and they start looking around, and they even spark up some conversation about like Amity's starting to think that the human realm is a little odd, and Luce even makes kind of like a little proposal saying like, hey, if something happens down the line that's good, I could probably show you around. And Amity's now even more determined to get this diary from him. It's like, we're getting you that diary. It's like, yes, I'm getting that data. I want to go to the human realm. So anyway, they keep on searching, and eventually they do find the diary. But unfortunately, some of the pages get eaten out by this echo mouse creature. And Luce is not happy about that. She gets angry, kind of raises her voice accidentally, and Luce and Amity get caught, and Amity gets fired. And that absolutely sucks. So when they're not outside the library, they start to kind of open up about their feelings towards each other, and Amity's like, everything's just changed when you have arrived, and, being around you makes me do stupid things, and I wish it didn't, that kind of thing. And that kind of cuts it deep for Luce, because one of her big insecurities was that, her weirdness and everything else kind of like, created some really bad things to happen. All this awkwardness, all these like bad things. And like she tries to make a joke out of it, with a half smile. It's like, you make me do some dumb things too, Amity, that kind of thing. But it's clear that what Amity said did kind of hurt her deep inside. And Amity kind of realizes that. And then Amity decides she's going to go home. And while she's with her siblings, she's like, I'm starting to feel like I never really felt before, ever since Luce arrived. But her siblings are there to actually be supportive siblings. Some people were criticizing them for not being supportive, but they are. They actually do care about her. And they actually are really awesome in this episode. They do get a few good funny moments, too. So, but, I think it's M, I think that's her name. Amira. And the other one's Edric, Ed. So, M is like, hey, you weren't happy before. That's not really such a bad thing. And she also talks about like, hey, your roots are growing out again. Would you like to dye your hair green? But this time, sensing an opportunity, Amity decides to get a new dye. And so she changes her hair to lilac purple, or cotton candy haired, to look like a cotton candy haired goddess. And if you're wondering why I'm saying that, well, just keep watching the video if you've already seen it. If you've already seen the episodes, just hang in there. So anyway, Luz comes by and starts apologizing immediately, like, I'm sorry if you don't want to see me again, that kind of thing. But she, finally sees what Amity looks like in her new do, and it really looks good. And I know some people are probably going to go like, I miss the old do, it was an iconic look. And it's like, hey, if this is her way of actually showing that, hey, she's really changed as a person, she's come a long way, that kind of thing, and this is her way of really expressing it, that, I don't mind it. And you know what? Her hair looks amazing. Her new hair really looks amazing. So yeah, we find out that Luz actually got Amity her job back by going through these different trials, and in her own words, it definitely was not fun. But she did it anyway because, she really does care about Amity. And it turns out that throughout that duration, the Echo Mouse was kind of attached to Luz's leg. Luz is still angry at it, but this is when Amity says, no, this is an Echo Mouse. Any information that it could consume, it can play back to you like a movie. So they rub it, and so Amity rubs its head, and we finally get to see one of the entries from Philip Whittabane's journal. And it starts talking about how he was trying to, create something that would give him a nice portal back to the human realm. So Luz is like, okay, you know what? This mouse is going to actually come in handy, and I'll actually get to learn more with this thing. And when we turn to Amity, and then when she finally processes what Luz went through to get her job back, it really shows just how much she cares about her. Amity's like, don't worry, Luz. You'll always find a way to sneak into people's hearts, a quote that everyone has just been memeing now. And of course, it leads to Amity kissing Luz's cheek, which that was something I didn't expect. A lot of other people didn't expect. And as Edric said, bold move, sister. It definitely was. And that's probably the big indication to Luz that, yes, Amity really does like you. And Amity's like, yeah, Luz really likes me. And this is when they both become kind of a blushing mess. And Amity ends up having I'm going to call it a blush down. You know how some people have a meltdown when they let out all their angry feelings and stuff like that? Well, a blush down to me is like when they let out all their embarrassed feelings. Like, why did I do that? 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 That kind of thing. So I'm calling that a blush down. So yeah, that's how the episode ends. And I don't know if I really gave a final score to it when I gave my thoughts about it in my Twitter post. But I will now, and I'm going to actually give Through the Looking Glass Ruins, both Gus's story and Luz and Amity's story, a 9.5 out of 10. It really is a really good episode. I really love the Lumini moments. They were funny, they were cute, they were awkwardly cute. It's the perfect kind of awkward. And Gus's story, it finally did give him some development. We did get some new characters, and we see possibly a new friendship arise too with, Gus and Matt. So it was a really good episode. 9.5 out of 10. Okay, so now let's get to Hunting Talisman. Again, I'll try and get through this one as quickly as I can. I've already 13 minutes. Sorry if this is a very long video. So, Luz is now finally going to try and get her Talisman, and so is the rest of her students, and the rest of the other students in Hexside, like Willow, Gus, and all that. So, the other ones get their Talisman based on emotional connections, like what they really want in life, their big aspirations, what they really want to do with their future. And Willow actually gets this kind of bee creature Talisman. Gus kind of gets this chameleon-esque Talisman, and even Basha, the person that people really don't like the people that in this fandom really don't like, she's like, I want to be a professional Grudge player, and she ends up getting her own crab Talisman, which is actually pretty cool, and she does get a legitimately cute moment. And that aspiration, I want to be a professional sports player, professional athlete, that's something I relate to so hard because I've had friends that want to do that. There's some that are getting on that path, and I've even had those aspirations before when I was younger. So, anyway, so Luz is about to get her own Talisman, but it turns out that the Talisman that are there, they don't exactly have an emotional connection to her because Luz doesn't exactly have enough to make an emotional connection with them. I mean, her big aspirations is to become a witch and to return home. Nothing really else. There's, nothing else that she really wants to do. She realizes she really didn't plan that far ahead, and she starts having another existential crisis, is she really going to get a Talisman or anything like that? What does she really want? That kind of thing. And Eda overhears her and starts planning on doing something. I'll talk about it later. Anyway, so one of the Talisman ends up actually sneaking into Luz's backpack. It's kind of a cardinal creature. And so Luz decides it's best to take the Talisman back. But when she tries to return that Talisman back, the bag, which has all the other Talisman in it, starts getting taken away by the Golden Guard. Yeah, the Golden Guard is in this episode. And the reason why he's doing that is because in a meeting, which had all the other head covens together talking about the Day of Unity, Bellows has a certain outburst where, something he's trying to contain inside is starting to come out, and he's using Palisman in order to, help himself out, but he just used the last of his reserves. And so the Golden Guard, who turns out is actually Bellows' nephew, Bellows' uncle, says, hey, I could probably get you more Palisman, but the wood that makes Palisman is actually starting to become really, really rare. So, that kind of thing. So, the Golden Guard starts, he takes this Palisman in order to help out Bellows, but Luz, hitches a ride on board and uses her glyph magic to, make Golden Guard, fly away, but of course the Golden Guard comes back. It wouldn't be that easy. But, unfortunately, the ship kind of crashes because of another minion in Bellows' army, which is Kikimora. And so the ship crashes, and this is when we actually see the Golden Guard's face. And it turns out it's a character that for some people, they think it's like a descendant of Philip Winnebane. That's a theory that's been rolling around somewhere. And it turns out his real name is Hunter. So Luz and Hunter, for the rest of the episode, kind of have this sibling relationship where I kind of hate you and stuff like that. I'll still mess with you, that kind of deal. And they even have a hand licking moment, are you licking my hand? I found that really hilarious, and although I really wish that, maybe Luz said something along the lines of, oh, you hand licker! That joke from the first episode of Drake and Josh, I think. I think it was maybe the pilot, I think. Yeah, and I know it's, really weird to make a Drake and Josh reference after, that stuff that happened. We're not going to get into that. But anyway, so Luz and Hunter start learning more about each other. Luz starts teaching Hunter about some glyph magic. They kind of learn more about each other. And they decide to team up together in order to stop Kikimora, because it seems like Kikimora wants Hunter dead. So they use some kind of spell that creates a little fog that blinds Kikimora. And Luz is about to take that Palisman back, but Hunter takes his Palisman, or actually his at least important weapon that allows him to do magic. Yeah, it turns out he doesn't have his own Palisman. He just kind of has, a spare one that still allows him to use magic, because on his own, he can't do magic. So, Luz is I really wish we could have been friends, but maybe that was just wishful thinking. But Hunter decides that, you know what, I'm not going to shoot you, and this is when he tells her his name, and eventually Luz does escape with the Palisman and returns them back to Hexside, and she starts to really discover for herself that maybe this visit back to the human realm will probably take a little longer. But then this is when Ida and King come through the window and say, hey, we managed to get you some wood that can help you create your own Palisman. We robbed it. They really did robbed it. They really did rob the place that was keeping that. So they were willing to do that for Luz. And that's both really funny and really endearing. So yeah, that's a really nice little ending for Luz. And as for Hunter, he does disappoint Bellows with coming back with nothing. And Hunter even has a little moment talking with Kikimora. He knows that Kikimora was trying to kill him. And then Hunter returns to his room and finds out that the Cardinal stowed away with him, and that's how he actually gets his Palisman. The Cardinal becomes his Palisman now. So you have to wonder, is he going to keep that Palisman? Is Bellows going to find out? Who knows? But yeah, this was definitely a very, very interesting episode. Probably not as good as Through the Looking Glass Ruins, but it definitely was a solid episode. We learned more, we got more lore, and we got a lot of more funny moments. We learned more about the Owl House, the continuity, with the Palisman, how you get one. And so that's made people think, what would my Palisman be? But anyway, that episode was really solid, so I'm going to give that one a 9. I gave that one a 9 out of 10. So it definitely was a solid episode. I really do like the Golden Guard, and I know some people probably were pretty quick to criticize, oh, why did they reveal his face now? Why didn't they save it for later? Well, the thing about this show I'm realizing is that certain tropes that would last longer in some shows, maybe to the middle of the season or maybe to the end of the season, that's something that the Owl House is not doing. It's no, we're not gonna dawdle around. We're not gonna try and create some unnecessary baggage. We're actually gonna finally do it when the time is right. That's basically their attitude. That's what I'm getting out of this. So that's why we end up seeing Hunter's face, and we don't go to the end of the season where say maybe Philip's face was scarred the whole entire time. Or maybe that might be what they do for Bellows. I don't know. But anyway, Hunting Palisman, it was very good. 9 out of 10. Check it out. So now, the 7th episode, Ida's Requiem, which is where we, get introduced to Rain Whispers, a friend from Ida's past, and it turns out that the both of them were probably a thing. So that's interesting. And Rain is also a non-binary character, meaning that Rain uses they and them pronouns. So yeah, I'll try my best to use the they and them pronouns because sometimes it can be a little tricky to me. Sometimes I'll remember it, sometimes I won't, so I'll do my best. So in this one, Ida starts to feel a little self-conscious about, oh, I'm not really a real mother to Luce and King. Like, they got their own families they want to return to, and I'm just kind of like the substitute right now. So she starts to really feel down on herself. And she also discovers that when she tries to do, like, her own kind of music, like bard magic, the curse kind of limits her a bit. So, sometimes it can sound beautiful, and then other times it just kind of, like, falls apart. But anyway, we also find out that Rain Whispers is actually the new head of the Bard Coven after the other one retired. But we also find out that Rain has also got a group of, like, little rebels known as the Bats. I think the Bards against the... Here, let me look it up on the wiki. Apologies. Nope. Nope, nope. Oh, come on. Here we go. Alright. Where does it say bats? No, the bats. What is the... They just keep saying bats in the wiki. Sorry, this is taking a while. Well, it's bards against the... something, but just bats. Okay, I'm not gonna waste any time. Anyway, so... They want to recruit Ida and get her help in order to, kind of limit Bellus's progress on, like, what will happen on Unity Day, which is where all the head covens come together for that little special day. So both Ida and Rain, like, formulate a mission to save others that would have been prisoners to Bellows. They save them, and they're planning on to do more. And Ida and Rain start to, catch up. They start having some nice chemistry. And this is when Rain discovers that Ida, her curse kind of limits her bard magic. And we also find out earlier in the episode why Rain decided to create this group to fight back against Bellows. It turns out that, Rain discovered that Bellows was really forcing people into really, being subservient to him. And Rain wasn't going to allow that. So they decided to create this rebellion to fight back. And turns out that Rain's one of those people that, she is a... Sorry. They are really strong, magic. They are really good with bard magic, but they're also kind of a little shy and not really good with speeches, too. And it actually creates some really embarrassingly funny moments, like, Ida, you're embarrassing me in front of my friends, that kind of thing. It's funny. So... Anyway, if you're wondering about a subplot, well, the subplot is that Luce and King are about to participate in this competition, and if they win this competition, they'll be able to get a message out to King's father, wherever he might be. So if they win, they'll get this message, that's the prize. So they go ahead with this race. Ida does show up for the race, and also King has a little something that he really wants to tell Ida, but Ida says, hey, save it until you win, that kind of thing, because she's thinking that, King is gonna say, I'm leaving, that kind of thing. She's thinking that that's what he's saying. So anyway, in the middle of the race, Ida gets a call from Rain about another mission, so she goes, and unfortunately this turns out to be a trap, and some of the people that Rain recruited end up becoming prisoners. And one of them is a character named Katja, and if you just say that over and over, Katja, gotcha. See? You see the joke there? And turns out that was a character that we saw in the very first episode, and she's like, oh no, not again! Like, poor Katja. So, yeah. So, with them gone, and turns out two head covens are actually searching around for whoever else is in this rebellion, and one of them is actually the Abomination head coven, who can actually turn into this thing. But it also turns out that in an ironic twist, he's actually one of those, I'm an abomination, but I still like to be clean, that kind of thing. It's kind of funny. So anyway, Rain comes up with an idea that if they use their bar magic together, they'll be able to actually freeze up themselves and those two other head covens so that the Day of Unity won't happen. So they start to use their bard magic, and Ida's actually fully accepting that yes, she will turn into stone, but she's doing it for the greater good. But then a picture flies out of Ida's hair and it shows like, Ida, King, and Luce. And Rain asks the question, hey, wait, do you have kids? And he's like, no, they're not my kids. Like, they have real families to attend to. They'd like to return to, that kind of thing. But, so Rain decides that, you know what? I can't go through with this. They need you. They really need you, and they probably need you more than you realize. So Rain decides to sacrifice themselves to the other head covens, and unfortunately, you know that little thing on the wrist? That, it kind of restricts all other magic, and the only magic you get to do is what you're assigned, like abomination magic, bar magic, so on. Well, turns out that actually works against them, because Kiki Moore shows up, taps it, and it traps Rain, and it puts puts them in, I guess, kind of a cocoon or something? Like, maybe for the Day of Unity or something like that. So yeah, Kikimora, is a bitch. I think everyone in the fandom hates her. But, yeah, that's the point. She's the villain. So, yeah. And then, as for Luce and King's story, turns out that they did not win. They tied for 5th, and the reason why was because while they were going well, King was starting to have upset stomach problems, and he threw up. And they crashed. So they won't be able to get the prize. But Ida decides, no, we're gonna get your message out there. So she decides to stream it on social media. So King gets his message out. A lot of other people watch it, including this character that maybe King's father, maybe a relative. Who knows? They're already making their theories. But anyway, so King finally announces what he's really gonna do. Instead, it turns out that he wasn't really going to leave Ida. It turns out that he was just changing his name, legally changing his name to King Clawthorn, and that really touches Ida's heart. And she cries, and that makes Luce cry, and yeah, it's both really emotional, really touching, and funny at the same time. So yeah, Ida's Requiem, definitely a very strong episode. Rain's a really nice character. We learn more about them and Ida's relationship. Turns out that maybe they might have been a thing, that kind of stuff. We learn more about bard magic. The music is beautiful. If you're a big music lover, you'll definitely love this. So, and the subplot was also pretty entertaining too. And the emotional moments at the end were like, Ida was like, they don't need me. They got real families to return to, that kind of thing. That was really kind of heartbreaking. And it was kind of refreshing to really see Ida kind of really so that's what you wanted to tell me this whole time? Like, you wanted to have your last name be mine? That kind of thing. And yeah, that's really touching. So Ida's Requiem, I did give a score on that. I did give a score to this episode on social media and Twitter, basically. Twitter username is in the description. So it was a 9.3 out of 10. I really did love this episode. I did love Rain. I love Ida's development. And it's just a really solid episode. But now, let's get to knocking on Hootie's door. But before I do that, let me get a swig of water. Because if I don't have water, I can't talk. There we go. Okay, so knocking on Hootie's door. Okay, pun title aside, there were some people that were kind of a little skeptical about this. It's a Hootie-centered episode. And some people were thinking, I'm willing to bet, some people were thinking, okay, this might be a decent episode, but it probably might be the worst. It's gonna probably be more concerned about comedy. They're gonna probably try and push some of Hootie's bits a bit too far, but we'll see how it goes. But while it does have its comedic moments, and Hootie does have his little bits, it actually has much more than you could possibly imagine. So again, this is spoiler-filled, and this episode just came out today, so if you have just seen the other ones, but you have not seen this yet, do not watch this part, because I don't want to spoil you guys. Again, this is your last warning. So, you good? Okay. So, Hootie is actually being pen pals with Lilith, and people were concerned, how is he gonna write letters? Well, it turns out he's got a typewriter, so he could just type with his beak. So that's pretty cute. So Hootie is talking with Lilith about the past few days, that kind of thing, and he also starts talking about how he wants to try and help out King, Ida, and Luce with their problems. King is trying to find out what kind of demon he really is, and all that stuff about his father and stuff like that. Ida is more concerned about what Bellis' plan, that kind of thing is. She's trying her best not to sleep. And then you have Luce, who's torn between wanting to get back to the human realm and also wanting to capture Amity's heart. No, that's literally what she says. So she's really torn between that. So Hootie decides, you know what? I'm gonna help these people. So first, he decides to help King figure out what kind of demon he is, and we learn more about, like what kind of demons there are, like beast or ones that can actually do magic, and they don't exactly work out. And King kind of has a bit of an outburst, but this outburst unleashes a hidden magic that King has. Yeah, King can actually do something. He's got a power. So that's definitely something. But Hootie thinks that he failed. He cries. He runs away. So yeah, even though he did technically help King in the very end. So anyway, now Hootie's thinking that, okay, if I fail with King, I'm going to try with Ida. So Ida's trying her best again to not sleep at all. But then Hootie gives her some cookies. So Ida takes a couple bites, and it turns out these are actually sleep-induced cookies. So yeah, Hootie technically drugs Ida and puts her to sleep. That sounds wrong, but what comes of that is actually a really big dream that Ida has, and it actually unveils more stuff about her past. Like, you know how her reaction was, like, about when Lily was talking about their dad, and she kind of gave this look like, So it was like, well, does she have like daddy troubles? Well, it turns out it's not really like that. You see, it seems like that the dad is actually a really nice guy, but because of Ida's curse, kind of taking the father's eye out, it's not really a pretty image. It kind of just adds to some of Ida's like insecurities, and it like adds to her her tendency to push others away and just keep others at arm's length. And we also discover more about Ida and Rain's relationship and why it didn't really go further. It turns out that Rain is thinking that maybe this might not work, and they're thinking about seeing other people. So yeah, that sucks. And Ida is like blaming this owl beast that's inside her, like, you're keeping me back. You're the reason why I keep pushing people away, that kind of thing. But eventually, by the end of the dream, she discovers that this owl beast is actually like, maybe it's insecure itself. Like, it actually has its own problems too, and it feels like alone and scared, that kind of thing. And Ida decides that instead of just fighting against it and just trying to like really like punch it away, that kind of thing, Ida decides to actually help it, and like maybe like they can learn from each other. Like maybe she can start to learn to live with it. And when she starts doing that, that's when she ends up getting a new form that looks like this, and it's really fucking cool. So, but Hootie thinks again that he failed. He runs off crying again, and so now he decides, okay, if those didn't work, I'm gonna try with Luce this time. So Luce again is torn between wanting to find a way back to the human realm, but also torn with, I want to tell Amity how I feel, I want to ask her out on a date, that kind of thing. And that's where we also get the line, cotton candy haired goddess. And that's literally what Luce says. I'm not kidding here. Hootie is going to try and help her with that issue, because Luce is like, she's a really nice, smart, classy lady, and I want to try and ask her out in the most perfect way possible. So Hootie gives her a note and saying, hey, go down to the basement, I've got a little something for you. And apparently this is the first time that Luce has actually been down in the Owl House basement. So she goes down there, and turns out that, in a shocking twist, Hootie kidnaps Amity? Yeah, I'm not kidding. Amity is in this episode. That I did not expect to happen. I didn't expect there to be more Lumity moments after what we got last time, but we do. And yes, both of them are still a blushing mess. And Hootie's other things too, like trying to create this tunnel of love thing. I'm not kidding here. Like, it's just making Luce even more embarrassed. And it's so awkward, but yet so funny and just cute. I can't help but love it. Anyway, now the thing is, the way Hootie sets this thing up, it's actually kind of clever, because there's actually a couple posters around where Hootie actually uses Luce's words to show Amity that this is really what she thinks of her. And Amity at one moment, like, kind of looks at the line, she's nice, smart, and classy. And while she is red in the face, blushing, she actually kind of cracks a smile a little bit. And she really starts to get really happy. But Luce's embarrassment of everything, like, Amity be mine, like, B-E-E. Like, Luce's embarrassment kind of wrecks the moment, and she starts, like, using her glyph magic to, like, make this embarrassment go away, make it go away, that kind of thing. And it kind of does ruin the moment a little bit. to the point where both of them kind of think like, yeah, this was just kind of a nightmare. So now Hootie thinks he ruined that too. So now that he's ruined, like, in his mind, 3 different possibilities to help, he's like, I'm gonna run away. I can't do this anymore. I can't help anyone. And he starts having an outburst, everything starts shaking, and King is about to fall off. But then Ida uses her new owl form to save King. And then there's a moment where Luce and Amity are about to be crushed by a rock, and then King uses his newfound power to save them. And so, yeah, so again, an ironic twist, while he didn't exactly help them, like, completely, he did still technically help them. So anyway, this is also the moment where Luce, tells Ida about what really happened, and that Luce is really trying to ask out Amity, and Ida's like, oh, that's what's going on here, and it's like, oh, don't worry, I'll help. And she actually does give a line which pretty much is really relatable to anybody. It's like, don't worry, it won't be the proposal to ask her out on a date, or ask, want to go out as a girlfriend, that kind of thing. It won't be perfect, but when is anything ever perfect? And that is absolutely true. So yeah, and the moment is there, and yeah, Luce and Amity actually ask each other, do you want to go out with me? And it's actually Amity that asks it first. So Luce was trying to get the courage to do it, but Amity ends up spitting it out. So, and then finally Luce says it too, and both of them finally hold hands. And yeah, if you're wondering where that clip was, like the trailer that had the clip of that, people were kind of wondering it was probably going to show up in yesterday's live, maybe the next episode. But no, it wasn't. Turns out that it was actually in knocking on Hootie's door. I'm sure nobody expected that. I'm sure nobody expected half the things that happened in this episode. I certainly didn't. So yeah, finally Hootie finishes up the letter to Lilith, happy that he still was able to help them out in their own way. King discovered that new power. Ida, coming to terms with what she has and, being fine with it, still drinking her elixir, but she's better. And now Luce is learning more and more about, the Philip Woodbane's journal, diary, whatever you want to call it. And now Luce and Amity are a thing. Like, really? Canonically a thing. So Hootie finally puts the letter to Lilith in the mailbox, and this is when we meet that King lookalike, the bigger creature that kind of has the face of King, and he basically has that voice, is like, here, take this to King Clawthorne. That kind of thing. But unfortunately, before that can be given to King, a bug lands on the letter. Hootie sees the bug, and you know how he swallowed the Echo Mouse without thinking in the last episode in Ida's Requiem? Well, he does the same thing with the letter, and it's like, I hope that was just junk mail. And it's like, ugh. And maybe that is my only nitpick with the episode. Like, why? Why did you have to swallow that? Like, why? But aside from that, this episode not only is good, but it surprised me. Like, I'm sure many people were thinking, like, oh, this is just gonna be, like, just a filler comedy episode. Like, it'll just be jokes, it won't really add anything, it'll just have Hootie stuff, and it'll get old fast. But, honestly, it didn't. Hootie stuff is actually kind of funny. And we learn more, and we get some more development. King gets a new power, Ida gets a new owl form. She starts to really come to terms with the owl beast that's inside her. And Luce finally gets the courage to say to Amity, would you like to go out? So now, they're a thing. So Hootie does help them out in the end. And Hootie also says to himself, like, I'm a genius. Like, yeah, I'm sure you are. But yeah, you technically did help them, so I'll give it to Hootie. So yeah, I kind of did have my doubts about this episode, but it really did surprise me. I'm not kidding. It really had all the stuff happen. There had the stuff I never expected to see, and I really do like it when something really subverts my expectations. I really do like it, and it subverted my expectations in the best way. As you can tell, this is not rehearsed. So, knock knock knocking on Hootie's door. It's not as good as Ida's Requiem, and it's not as good as Through the Looking Glass Ruins. But it still is a very good episode all the way through, and you really should watch it if you want to get some good laughs, some good development, and of course a lot of Lumity moments. If you want those, this is the episode for you. So I'll give this one a 9.2 out of 10. It really does deserve to be watched, and it's really one of the most unexpected episodes I've ever seen from any show. And again, like I said before, it doesn't dawdle around on some subjects. Like, it's not, oh, it's just keeping it around for maybe the middle of the season or maybe till the end, stuff like that. But no, it actually gets some of that stuff out of the way. We get King's new power. We see Ida in a new owl form and her really, like, saying, hey, you know what, maybe this owl beast really isn't the worst thing to deal with, and she's learning to live with it. And as for Luce and Amity, they're a thing now. We didn't have that stupid thing where it's like, oh, I don't think we're really meant to be together or something like that. And they wait until maybe the end of season 2, or maybe even at the end of the show to have that happen. No, they get it right out of the way. And I love that. So yeah, watch this episode and watch the other ones too. And again, I'm sorry this was a long video, over 40 minutes. But I really just had to get everything out, because I had it building up, and I just had to say it. I just had to keep talking about it. And so, yeah, there you go. Nearly 42 minutes of, as Canadian Stub Muffin would say, high-quality entertainment. So, yeah, that's my review of the 4 episodes. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And again, I will try to get a real proper episode review out soon. Hopefully near my birthday, but we'll see. So, anyway, if you also want to follow my Twitter, the link, username is in the description down below. And again, check out my other videos if you haven't already. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, my name is Sam, and good night, everybody. I talked for 42 straight minutes with barely any breath. I think I'm gonna pass out.